As I record this, it's a couple days before the infamous, notorious October 20th date, and anyone involved in Bigfoot research knows of the significance of that date, of course being the day that Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin claimed to have filmed a female Sasquatch in Northern California in the Bluff Creek area. I thought it apropos to put together a video regarding the first showings of the film, because there may be many people that are unaware of how the film started to roll, so to speak, no pun intended, and what steps were had for it to become, more public and more well known. It just didn't happen overnight. But before we get too far into that, I want to apologize for the state I'm in. I've been dealing with a serious bout of bronchitis. It's really wiped me out, and I should have been working on this video a lot sooner and done more thorough research, so a lot of it's just off the cuff by memory, and my apologies if I missed something. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments, and maybe there's an opportunity to do this again next year with a little more research time that I just didn't have this time around. But anyways, some already know, of course, because you're really honed in on the beginnings of the Patterson-Gimlin film, while others don't. It's said that the Patterson-Gimlin film is the second most watched film in all history, first being the Zapruder film. That's pretty significant when you think about it. So it's garnered a lot of attention, both negative and positive, with, of course, people believing that it's a hoax, others believing it's real, some people buying into the story that Bob Hieronymus has put forth, that he was involved in the film and dressed in a costume, while others say there's too many holes in the story and there's some flat-out lies involved in that. So there's a lot of controversy that goes without saying. I don't want to dabble with that. I just want to give the facts as they're known, and we'll go from there. The first showing that we're aware of, it was not public, it was a private showing, occurred on Sunday, October the 22nd, 1967, so 2 days after the film was allegedly taken. The film was screened at Al DeAtley's house. Al DeAtley was Roger Patterson's brother-in-law. He married one of Roger Patterson's sisters. And he lived at 8711 Hawthorne Drive in Yakima, in a modest house, I'd say. And I believe that the showing occurred in the basement. I may be wrong about that, but I think that's what John Green said. And the people present at that showing were, of course, Al DeAtley, Roger, John Green, Renee DeHinden, and Jim McLaren. Jim McLaren, for those who don't know, was someone deeply involved in Sasquatch research at that time. We all know Renee DeHinden and John Green, obviously. Curiously and strangely, Bob Gimlin was not present at that showing, although he only lived less than 15-minute drive from Al DeAtley's house. He said he was just tired. He was exhausted from the trip at Bluff Creek, and I guess it is what it is. I know, personally speaking, I would have been there to see what was captured on film, because they didn't know if they had anything on film, honestly, because the cameras at the time, you couldn't just dial it back and review it. You had to have it processed, and it was a pretty intense processing to develop the film. So it's not like today where we can just rewind it and watch it back. So the film was screened in DeAtley's house several times, to the point where John Green said that the film was showing signs of wear and tear, which is a shame, but they didn't know any better. And that's just how it goes. So that's the first showing, and I showed a few pictures there that that make you feel like you were there, maybe. um, the next showing that we're aware of occurred on October the 26th, 1967, at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, British Columbia. And UBC, as it's commonly known, a reputable university in Canada. And this was the doing of John Green. He definitely was the catalyst for this and most likely arranged everything there. He had been corresponding and spending time with one of the anthropologists from the university, and a guy named Don Abbott. And Green thought it might be best to do a screening for scientists at the university in the hopes that the scientific community would get involved and they could, put an end to the mystery, so to speak. Didn't quite go that way. There were 2 showings. One was specifically for the scientists. The other showing was more of a mix of people that Green had invited, or people that the scientists had invited that weren't necessarily scientists. I think there were only 3 bona fide scientists at the showings, 2 university profs, and the rest were just regular laypersons. Again, the showing didn't go as they had hoped. Lukewarm response. One of the museum employees by the name of Frank Beebe flat out said that it was a hoax, and that didn't sit well with Green and others. There was also a showing at Hotel Georgia. I believe that was in the evening of the same day, October 26th. And that was for the press. And the reason that they didn't do the press release or the press review at UBC was because UBC wouldn't allow for a press screening at their institution. So the Hotel Georgia had to be booked. The Hotel Georgia still remains today, although it's changed names. It's now called the Rosewood Hotel Georgia. It changed names in 2010. It opened as the Hotel Georgia in 1927, and it still sits at 801 West Georgia Street, Vancouver. And you can see some pictures there of it. More current pictures. But you get an idea. And there is a clip of Roger Patterson being interviewed at that press conference. So enjoy that for a second here.
I didn't expect anybody to come up and say, well, that's a Sasquatch. I know what it was, and I feel that within the next 5, maybe 10 years, that if I don't capture one, somebody's going to.
You're going back out to capture one?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's the only footage I'm aware of from that press release or press conference, press review, whatever you want to call it. If anyone has any other footage, please share it, because it's quite historical. Now, after the 26th showings at UBC and Hotel Georgia, Patterson returned to the Yakima area. He actually lived in Tampico, but he returned into the area, and it's thought that he loaned a copy of his film to the local TV station, Kima TV, or Kima TV. There doesn't appear to be any copies of the broadcast they supposedly did, but yeah, they supposedly did broadcast the film and talk about it. How long of a segment that was, I don't know, but it's believed that they ran a short feature. I did reach out to them many years back to see if they happened to have a copy, but I was told that they just didn't keep copies of that nature back then. The film would be reused or discarded when it wore thin. It's just different than it is today. Now we can digitally archive stuff, and it's not an issue. But back then, they just didn't have the means to do it, and or really they didn't believe that it was necessary. So if they did run a feature, a segment, which I believe they did, I have no reason to doubt it. It's probably gone forever, and that probably would have happened, um, a few days after Patterson had returned. So somewhere around October 28th, 29th, 30th, 1967, there was a broadcast on Kima TV. And so that would have been public, a public release of the film, and that would have been, I guess, the first public showing of the film, true public showing of the film. I wouldn't count the showings at UBC as public, or the one at the Georgia Hotel, Hotel Georgia rather, because they weren't really public. Patterson inevitably was hoping to make money from the film, and he traveled to New York City to meet with reps from Life magazine. There was an interest from them to run a feature and possibly buy the rights to the film. So Patterson and his brother-in-law Al Diatley, along with Bob Gimlin, they were flown over on behalf of Life magazine. They were flown over to New York City, where they met and discussed things. Ultimately, Life decided to not do anything related to the film of any substance. They did run a tiny little piece on the film, but it was, to be honest with you, it didn't mention their names. It was quite ambiguous, but you could tell what it was. But because they were in New York City, and Ivan T. Sanderson, renowned zoologist at the time and a recognized TV personality, he was able to connect with Roger Patterson, and they began to broker a deal to have Argosy magazine run a feature on the film, and ultimately they would. In 1968 February, Argosy was the first magazine to run a major article showing the some film stills, which hadn't been done previously. And that would also spawn an association with the British Broadcasting Corporation that I believe was set up by Sanderson. So, of course, the British Broadcasting Corporation, huge in the UK, a lot of clout, a lot of respect. They wanted to work with Patterson to create not just a small segment, TV segment, but an actual full-length documentary, which they did end up doing, and that was broadcast on July 27th, 1968, in the UK only. So, ironically, the UK was the audience. The UK audience was the first audience to really get a look at the film, on a broader scale. Of course, again, back to Yakima, that local TV station did show it, but it was, at the time, understand that TV stations weren't syndicated at that time throughout the U.S. So it only appeared in Yakima, and only people in Yakima that had access to that TV station would have watched it. Whereas the British Broadcasting Corporation, it's all through the UK, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Britain, and other parts of the world too, would have been able to see that documentary, which appropriately was called Bigfoot, America's Abominable Snowman. To my knowledge, it only aired once on that date, July 27th, 1968. However, the deal Patterson made was a bit of a handshake deal with the BBC, and that was that they could use his footage as long as he could use what they created. And that's exactly what Patterson did, along with his brother-in-law, Al Diatley. They took the BBC documentary, cut and spliced it, and made their own documentary that they then traveled around the U.S., mostly Pacific Northwest, Midwest, and they four-walled it, which meant that they went into little towns and cities, and they would show it. They would book a theater or two and show it one night or two nights, and then get the hell out of there before word spread about it being bad or good. So they did this for many months, and they made pretty good money from it. A lot of people don't realize they made really good money from those showings, because at one time I think there was up to 38 reels or copies of the reels, and they were playing at the same time in different cities in those areas, Northwest, Pacific Northwest, and you know, again, in central U.S. as far as over as Michigan. So a lot of people were able to see the film, including Jeffrey Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and that really spurred his interest in the subject. The four-walling tour didn't last that long for various reasons. One, of course, Patterson's health rapidly began to decline, and other things too. But anyhow, because they had started working with someone by the name of Ron Olson, that would prompt the next major showing of the film. Olson was one of the sons of a co-owner of American National Enterprises, which was a documentary film maker, and they had been doing quite well, four-walling different documentaries throughout the U.S., had made decent money, and Ron and his then twin brother, who has passed away, kind of took up the business from their father, but it wasn't easy for them. Ron really wanted to do a Bigfoot documentary, but his father didn't really see any money in that. But Ron was able to convince American National Enterprise, and in 1972 he made a short documentary called Bigfoot, Man or Beast, and that would be the next major showing of the Patterson-Gimlin film. And we all know that after that there were several other Bigfoot documentaries, and I think it all culminates to what I feel is probably the most famous, or the most again, I'm going to use the word significant again, the most significant program to run the Patterson-Gimlin film was the very well done and highly respected documentary series called In Search Of, which was hosted by Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek. If you haven't had a chance to watch any of the In Search Of programs, do yourself a favor. Watch them. I don't know. I'm guessing they're on YouTube probably. You can still buy the DVD set through Amazon or on eBay. It's worth every penny. These are really well done programs. And In Search Of ran an episode called Bigfoot in 1977, and it shows the Patterson-Gimlin film. And I think that was a reason that many of us got involved, including myself. I don't think I watched it in 1977. I may have watched it a bit later because he would always run reruns. But I know that watching In Search Of was inspirational for many of us. I'm not going to cite all the showings of the Patterson-Gimlin film, of course. I just wanted to highlight the first showings and then some of the main ones, again, culminating up to 1977 with the In Search Of showing of it. But anyways, I thought it might be of interest to some to see how the Patterson-Gimlin film really got its first beginnings, and what became of it, and how it morphed through time with different showings on different programs. And of course now the internet, we a blessing and a curse, especially with how the film has been manipulated. I won't go into that because it would spark a whole conversation and debate. Anyways, enjoy this October 20th date. It is highly significant with Sasquatch researchers. Stay safe out there, and stay well.
enjoying all this rare and unique content. Please show your support by subscribing and leaving comments.